Hi Precalculus. So we worked on factoring again today because there's lots of different types of factoring. And I wanted to just cover a couple of the types of factoring that we talked about just to cement them in your mind a little bit. Now, when you're asked to factor something with fractional exponents, this can get a little confusing, and I think the first thing you want to do is just look for things that they have in common. Start at the easiest place. So I see that they all have a 3 in them, so I'm going to go ahead and factor the 3 out. That makes it look a little bit easier. And now you have to remember that when you're factoring, you always take the smallest exponent out. Just like we take the smallest number that's in common, we're always going to take the smallest exponent. Clearly, -1/2 is the smallest of these exponents, and so I'm going to factor this -1/2 out. Now, when I factor it out, I'm subtracting it away from each exponent. So you don't have to write this on your paper, but just to make it really explicit, I'm going to write it out all along. -1/2 out. What I'm doing, essentially, is I'm subtracting it. So I would say x to the 3/2 minus a -1/2, and then -3x to the 1/2 minus a -1/2, and 2x to the -1/2 minus a -1/2. Because when you factor out, you're really dividing, and when you divide, you're subtracting exponents. Okay. So when I do this now, a minus in all these places becomes a plus. So I'm going to go ahead and change those to pluses. I'll write this on the next line for you guys. So 3/2 plus a 1/2 is 4/2. And then a -1/2 plus a 1/2 cancels out and leaves you with 2x to the 0. Okay. So 4/2 obviously is just x, and x to the 0, because anything to the 0 power is 1, the x drops out and you just don't see it because x to the 0 is 1, so this is just plus 2. So now we have a 3x to the -1/2 out in front. And now x squared minus 3x plus 2 is something that looks familiar. So I've got 3x to the -1/2. Let's see, I need two things to multiply to 2 and add it to -3. That's going to have to be a -2 and a -1. And there's my final answer. And then, as always, if you wanted to check your work on a test or a quiz, you could FOIL out this parentheses and then distribute the 3x to the -1/2 back in, and it should match up with the original problem. The next one that usually causes pre-calculus kids some trouble are sum and difference of cubes, especially when they don't look like cubes. You see this x to the 6th power and you think, hey, Mrs. Lowney, that's not a cube, except for the fact that if I write it as x squared, then I can see that it really is a cube, because x squared raised to the 3rd, 2 times 3 gives me 6. And then this is minus 2 cubed. Now remember, with the difference of cubes, we use the acronym SOAP to help us remember where the positives and negatives go. So SOAP is same, opposite, always positive. That's where the same is the initial problem, always a plus sign. And then this is the first term, so the x squared and minus 2. Those are my a and my b. And then I square x squared. X squared squared is x to the 4th. Okay. I multiply these two together, ignoring signs, so I'm going to have 2x squared. And then I square the 2, and I get 4. Sorry, those arrows might be kind of confusing. I was just trying to help you follow along. Anyway, so my final answer here would be x squared minus 2 times x to the 4th plus 2x squared plus 4. Note, this x to the 4th plus 2x squared plus 4 should not factor. If you do this correctly, this bad boy in the end, this 3-term trinomial, if I want to use the vocabulary, shouldn't factor, ever. So if you're doing it right, this doesn't factor. If you're doing something wrong, that might factor, and that should be an indication to you that you're making a mistake somewhere. The last problem that I wanted to show you, or kind of put in your memories a little bit, memory banks, is factoring out common terms that you're not really used to seeing. So a term, this is all connected with multiplication, right? There's a multiplication sign there, a multiplication sign there. A term is separated by addition and subtraction. So right now, x squared minus 1 is in both of them. This is almost like a factor by grouping problem that's already been started for you. And so because they have a common factor, I can pull the x squared minus 1 out in front. I can factor it out. and then I write what I have left over. Factor x squared minus 1 out, then I've got an x squared left over. Here, if I factor it out, I've got a minus 9 left over. This is actually exactly like factor by grouping. But then to factor this completely, I have to notice that these are both difference of squares. So I need to factor this as x plus 1 times x minus 1 and x plus 3 times x minus 3. So you've got to make sure that in pre-calculus when you're factoring, you factor, factor, factor everything that you possibly can until every single parenthesis is factored completely. All right, that's it for notes tonight. I will see you in class tomorrow. Thanks.